Captain Tori smoothed her uniform as the airlock cycled. The metallic taste of recycled air gave way to something different, a subtle floral scent that seemed deliberately designed to put humans at ease. She straightened her red commander's jacket, a personal touch that fleet admirals had frowned upon but ultimately allowed. "Remember," she said to her team, "we represent all of humanity today. Every colony, every nation, every child looking up at the stars." Dr. Kwan, the xenobiologist, checked his instruments one final time. Bio readings suggest their atmosphere is comparable to ours, but their body temperature runs about 4 degrees cooler. They might find our ship uncomfortably warm. The inner door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing 3 Eldorans standing in perfect formation. Their skin, a muted silver blue, rippled slightly as they observed the humans. Captain Torres had expected their height. The briefing files had been accurate about their towering, slender frames, but not the eyes. 3 pairs of opalescent orbs studied her with an intensity that felt like physical pressure. "Greetings from Earth and her colonies," Torres said, employing the carefully rehearsed welcome prepared by Earth's diplomatic corps. "We come seeking friendship and knowledge." The central Eldoran's skin shifted to a deeper blue. When it spoke, the words emerged in perfect English, though its mouth barely moved. "The Galactic Consortium acknowledges humanity's presence. We have observed your development for some time." Torres maintained her diplomatic smile, though the revelation sent a chill through her. "You've been watching us. All developing species are monitored," the Eldoran replied, its tone suggesting this was perfectly reasonable. "Your transition to interplanetary status triggered official contact protocols." The diplomatic team was led down corridors that seemed to shift and breathe. The architecture refused to remain static, subtly reconfiguring itself as they walked. Torres noted how each junction contained hidden apertures, defensive positions, her military training suggested, though artfully concealed. The great hall they entered defied human understanding of physics. The ceiling arched impossibly high, with distant points of light that mirrored constellations no human had ever seen. Representatives of 7 species sat in a semicircle, their diversity staggering. Beside the Eldoran were insectoid creatures with compound eyes, crystalline beings that refracted light into complex patterns, and others Torres couldn't begin to classify. "The human delegation will now be assessed," announced a creature composed of what appeared to be floating geometric shapes connected by threads of energy. Before Torres could ask what assessment entailed, holographic displays materialized around them, showing scenes from Earth's history: wars, environmental collapse, technological advancements, space exploration. The displays cycled rapidly, lingering on moments of human conflict and recovery. "Your species exhibits concerning patterns," said one of the crystalline beings, its voice like wind through chimes. "Technological development without corresponding social harmony. Resource consumption exceeding planetary capacity. Multiple competing governance systems." Torres felt her diplomatic smile strain. "We call that diversity. Different approaches allow for faster innovation and adaptation." The Eldoran translator's skin flushed a dismissive yellow. "It produces inefficiency and conflict." "Sometimes," Torres conceded, "but it also produced this." She gestured to herself and her team. "We've unified enough to stand before you as one people, while maintaining our differences." The assembled representatives conferred in a cacophony of sounds, some beyond human hearing range. Dr. Kwan's translator device struggled to keep pace, occasionally emitting confused beeps. Finally, the lead Eldoran addressed them again. "The consortium has decided. Humanity will be granted probationary status. You will receive limited access to approved technologies and interstellar coordinates. A regulatory delegation will establish residence on your homeworld to supervise appropriate development." Captain Torres felt her smile vanish completely. "Supervise. For your benefit," the Eldoran explained, its tone suggesting extraordinary generosity. "Many species require millennia of guidance before full integration." The diplomatic team exchanged glances. This wasn't the equal partnership they had hoped for. "We appreciate your offer," Torres said carefully, "but Earth's governments will need to review any arrangement involving foreign supervision." The temperature in the room seemed to drop. The insectoid representative clicked its mandibles in what Torres assumed was disapproval. "This is standard procedure," the Eldarin stated, its skin now pulsing with bands of deep purple. "Resistance to guidance is noted as a developmental concern." That evening, alone in her quarters aboard the Horizon, Torres recorded her personal observations in an old-fashioned paper journal, something the consortium's surveillance would consider too primitive to monitor. "They see us as children," she wrote, "dangerous children who've acquired tools without wisdom. Their civilization values order above all else. Their technology is centuries beyond ours, but it advances by careful increments along predetermined paths. They cannot comprehend how we made certain leaps because they would never have attempted them." She added a final note before securing the journal in her personal safe. "They fear us because we're unpredictable. And that may be humanity's greatest advantage among the stars." As the Horizon maintained its position near the massive consortium vessel, Torres watched Earth rising over the lunar horizon through her viewport. The blue marble looked small and vulnerable from here, but she knew better. Humanity had survived ice ages, plagues, world wars, and their own environmental mistakes. They would survive the consortium's guidance too, and perhaps teach these ancient civilizations a thing or two about the power of chaos, creativity, and courage. Dr. Sanjay Patil hunched over his workstation in the dimly lit laboratory, the red Martian night casting long shadows through the reinforced dome windows. His fingers trembled slightly as he adjusted the molecular visualizer. On the medical bed nearby, his daughter Maya slept fitfully, her small chest rising and falling with labored breaths. The monitor beside her beeped steadily, tracking the Martian dust particles embedded in her lungs, a condition the consortium representatives had called regrettable but expected in primitive environments. Expected, Sanjay whispered to himself, anchor fueling his focus, but not acceptable. The nanobots on his screen responded to his latest adjustment, their microscopic structures reconfiguring. According to consortium regulations, such technology required 500 years of simulated testing before even considering a prototype. Maya had weeks at most. His lab partner, Dr. Eliza Chen, entered carrying 2 steaming mugs. "You need to rest, Sanjay." "The consortium denied our request again," he said, accepting the coffee with a nod of thanks. They offered to transport Maya to their medical facility for observation and documentation of terrestrial adaptation failure. His voice cracked on the last words. Eliza placed a hand on his shoulder. "Those heartless bureaucrats. They have the technology to help but won't share it because of their precious timeline." "So we'll make our own," Sanjay said, turning back to his work. The nanobots were his life's work. Microscopic machines programmed to identify and remove foreign particles while repairing damaged tissue. What the consortium didn't understand was that he'd designed them with emergency protocols, allowing them to adapt to unexpected situations rather than following rigid programming. It was this very approach to technology that the aliens found so disturbing about humanity. 3 days later, as dawn broke over Olympus Mons, Sanjay administered the treatment. The laboratory's security system had been temporarily malfunctioning, courtesy of Eliza's hacking skills, ensuring no alerts reached the consortium monitors. Maya's fever broke by evening. By the following morning, her breathing had cleared completely. And by week's end, she was running through the hydroponics garden, laughing as she hadn't in months. What Sanjay hadn't anticipated was how his nanobots would interact with the Martian environment outside his daughter's body. Released through her exhaled breath into the colony's air recycling system, the nanobots found new purpose. They began restructuring the toxic compounds in Martian soil, converting them into forms compatible with Earth vegetation. The first sign appeared in the colony's peripheral agricultural test zone, a patch of previously barren red soil sprouting green shoots without any protective dome. Colony botanists were baffled until their microscopes revealed the cause. Patel's nanobots exponentially reproduced, transforming the hostile Martian chemistry at its most fundamental level. Word spread quickly through the Mars colonies. By the time the consortium's 4 armed regulators arrived at Sanjay's laboratory, his design specifications had been backed up on thousands of personal devices across 3 planets and a dozen orbital stations. Dr. Sanjay Patel announced the lead regulator, its voice modulator producing perfect, emotionless English. "You have violated Technological Development Protocol 37B. All research materials and prototypes must be surrendered for immediate containment." Sanjay stood with Maya beside him in the colony's main plaza, surrounded by hundreds of Mars colonists. Many were families with children who suffered from the same condition Maya had overcome. "My work isn't a violation, but a necessity," Sanjay replied, his voice amplified across the plaza. "Your protocols would have let my daughter die while waiting for permission to save her." The regulator's upper arms twitched in what colony xenologists recognized as extreme displeasure. "Uncontrolled technological advancement threatens cosmic stability. Your nanobots could produce cascading environmental changes with unpredictable outcomes." "You mean like turning a deadly planet into a habitable one?" called out a voice from the crowd. Cheers erupted. The confrontation was broadcast across the solar system. On Earth, the United Nations Security Council convened an emergency session, while colonial governments across Mars, Venus, and the Jovian moons declared their support for what was now being called the Patel Protocol, humanity's right to develop technology necessary for survival. The consortium responded with immediate sanctions. All scheduled knowledge exchanges were suspended. Trade routes to human colonies were blockaded. The Eldarin ambassador delivered a final warning: surrender the nanobot technology or face appropriate containment measures. In response, the president of the United Colonies activated Operation Open Source. What began as a desperate backup plan became a planetary celebration. Encrypted fragments of Sanjay's research were hidden in music files, embedded in art installations, encoded in children's games. Finding and assembling these fragments became a global passion, with millions participating in what one commentator called the greatest scavenger hunt in human history. From his laboratory window, Sanjay watched the first large-scale implementation of his nanobots transform a valley that had been rust-red for billions of years. Within days, it showed the first hints of green. Within weeks, preliminary atmospheric changes were detectable from orbit. The consortium believes technology should follow a predetermined path, he explained to Maya as they observed the transformation. But humanity has always taken shortcuts when necessary. We leap before we're ready because sometimes waiting for readiness means extinction. Maya squeezed her father's hand and pointed to a tiny flower pushing through the newly transformed soil, the first naturally growing plant on Mars in perhaps billions of years. "Sometimes," Sanjay said softly, "breaking the rules is the only way forward." In distant consortium monitoring stations, alarm signals flashed as Mars began its improbable transformation. For the first time in their long history, the elder species faced a question with no predetermined answer. What do you do with a species that refuses to follow the established path? Lieutenant Commander Fatima Al-Zarani's apartment in Lego's Space Elevator Station was a deliberate contradiction. Cutting-edge quantum computing equipment surrounded by vintage furniture and actual paper books. The old saying went that to catch a predator, one must think like a predator. To catch the most sophisticated digital attackers in the galaxy, Fatima maintained both ultra-modern and positively ancient technology side by side. Her personal neural interface pinged with an alert as she was brewing her third cup of coffee. The network monitoring algorithm she'd designed, unofficially, and definitely against consortium regulations, had detected something unusual in public data traffic patterns. "Show me," she muttered, and the wall display illuminated with cascading data streams. To most observers, nothing would appear amiss. But Fatima had spent her teenage years as one of Earth's most notorious hackers before the UN Cyber Defense Force recruited her instead of imprisoning her. Her eyes narrowed. "Too perfect," she whispered, noting the mathematically precise load balancing across server clusters. No human network ever ran that smoothly. Something was systematically eliminating natural fluctuations. She initiated a secure connection to her former mentor, Admiral Hassan, using an old-fashioned radio frequency transmission system that the consortium considered too primitive to monitor. "Someone's inside our networks, sir. Not probing. They're already in, moving like ghosts." The Admiral's voice crackled through the speaker. "Consortium. Has to be. Their signature is too elegant, too efficient. No human hacker leaves patterns that perfect." "How that?" Fatima watched as invisible tendrils spread through critical infrastructure nodes. "They're everywhere, sir. Power grids, orbital traffic control, agricultural management systems. They're not disrupting anything yet, just waiting." "For what?" "If I had to guess, a synchronous takeover. One moment everything's normal. The next moment they control it all." The silence from the Admiral's end stretched. Finally, options. Fatima took a deep breath. "Honeycomb." "That's not an option, Commander. The economic damage alone." "With respect, sir, we're about to lose everything." Honeycomb was designed for exactly this scenario. Another pause. "You have authorization. God help us." Fatima's fingers flew across physical keyboards as she initiated the most controversial cybersecurity protocol ever designed. Unlike conventional security systems that tried to protect everything equally, Honeycomb deliberately sacrificed non-essential systems to save critical ones. As the protocol activated, 30% of Earth's networks went dark in a controlled shutdown. Power outages swept across non-essential sectors. Communication hubs failed. Entertainment systems collapsed. The Vex, hidden in their digital camouflage, suddenly found themselves exposed as the landscape they'd been navigating transformed around them. Commander Zith's confident transmission to his team cut off mid-sentence as emergency fireballs materialized, isolating critical systems from compromised ones. Fatima smiled grimly as she watched the attackers' confusion ripple through the remaining networks. "You expected us to protect everything equally," she murmured. "You don't understand triage." She activated her emergency recruitment protocol, sending encrypted messages to 12 former hackers, brilliant digital criminals she'd identified but never reported during her days with cyber defense. Their skills were too valuable to waste in prison. Within hours, they gathered virtually in a secure server hub, their avatars reflecting their personalities. From sleek corporate disguises to fantastical creatures, none used real names or appearances. Trust only went so far among hackers. "The situation is simple," Fatima explained. "Aliens are in our networks. Help me kick them out, and your records get scrubbed clean. Refuse, and when they take over, you'll be the first targets for mind control. Bold of you to assume we have minds worth controlling," quipped a hacker whose avatar was a hovering octopus made of circuitry. The counterattack began with what Fatima called digital anthropology, studying the attacker's code structure to understand their thinking patterns. The Vex programming was elegant, mathematically perfect, and utterly predictable. "They code like they've never faced an actual adversary," noted one hacker. "No obfuscation, no misdirection." "Because they haven't," Fatima replied. "The consortium doesn't permit competing approaches. They've never had their systems seriously challenged." The team deployed what they called chaotic defense, security algorithms that deliberately introduced controlled randomness. Conventional wisdom said perfect security required perfect order. Human hackers had learned the opposite. Predictability was vulnerability. The masterstroke came from an unlikely source, a 17-year-old hacker whose specialty was manipulating social media algorithms. She created a self-replicating package hidden in cat videos, content the aliens had flagged for intensive study due to humanity's inexplicable obsession with feline companions. As the Vex analyzed these seemingly harmless files, the Trojan infiltrated their command systems, For every system they compromised, humans now claimed one of theirs. The counterattack reached its climax when Fatima's team gained access to the consortium's primary communication array. Rather than destroying it, they broadcast every file they'd recovered: surveillance records of developing species, manipulation of evolutionary paths, deliberate suppression of promising civilizations. As the data flooded the consortium's emergency channels, the Vex commander realized the scale of his failure. No species had ever penetrated their systems. The concept wasn't even included in their threat assessments. In her apartment, surrounded by screens showing the chaos spreading through consortium networks, Fatima sipped her now-cold coffee. "You brought perfect order to battle chaos," she said to the imagined Vex commander. "But chaos is humanity's natural state, and we've learned to weaponize it." Across 12 star systems, junior member species received unexpected data packages revealing centuries of manipulation. The consortium's perfect order was crumbling, all because they couldn't comprehend that sometimes the most sophisticated defense isn't perfect security. It's creative insecurity. Colony Director Marcus Chen watched from the command center as the Krell warships approached in perfect formation. Their hulls gleamed with an iridescent sheen that reminded him of beetle carapaces, beautiful and terrifying in equal measure. Proximity alarms wailed throughout the colony, but Chen remained unnaturally calm. "Defensive positions report ready, sir," his assistant said, voice trembling. "But we're outnumbered 10-1. Numbers aren't everything," Chen replied, his eyes fixed on his daughter Lily, who was making final adjustments to what the colonists had nicknamed the Symphony Disruptor. Lily's insight had been brilliant in its simplicity. The Krell operated on a hive mind frequency that required perfect harmony, like an orchestra where every instrument had to be precisely in tune. Her synthesizer, originally designed for creating music, had been repurposed to broadcast dissonant frequencies that would disrupt that harmony. "Broadcasting in 3, 2, 1. Lily called out, her fingers dancing across the modified keyboard. The effect was immediate and spectacular. The perfect formation of Krell ships wobbled, then broke apart as individual vessels began moving erratically. Some fired weapons at empty space, others drifted aimlessly. "Now," Chen ordered, and the hidden human ships emerged from the radiation belt of the gas giant where they'd been concealed. What followed wasn't so much a battle as a chaotic dance. Human vessels, piloted by individuals making independent decisions, executed unpredictable maneuvers that the Krell collective mind couldn't anticipate. Each Krell ship, suddenly forced to operate independently without the guidance of the hive, struggled to adapt to a combat style they had never needed to develop. In the colony's main shelter, children pressed against viewport windows, cheering as human ships darted between the massive Krell vessels like agile birds harassing a lumbering predator. Parents tried to pull them away from the potentially dangerous view, but Chen had ordered the shelter's communication systems to broadcast the battle. He wanted everyone to see what was happening, to understand that they were witnessing history. The final blow came when Lily, inspired by the colony's children singing along with her synthesizer, began broadcasting Earth music across all frequencies, a cacophony of different genres and rhythms that completely overwhelmed the Krell neural networks. Admiral Kovex, aboard his flagship, experienced something no Krell had felt in centuries: isolation. Cut off from the hive mind, forced to think and decide alone, he gave the only order he could conceive: retreat. As the Krell ships collided with each other in their desperate flight from the human colony, Chen put his arm around his daughter's shoulders. "You just saved thousands of lives with music," he said softly. Lily smiled up at him. "The consortium thinks harmony means everyone playing the same note, but real harmony comes from different notes working together." Chen looked out at the stars beyond the colony dome. That's a lesson they're going to learn the hard way. Dr. Esther Okonkwo limped through the shadowed corridors of the Crystal Spire Assembly, her cane tapping a gentle rhythm against the ancient floor. The consortium architecture was designed to intimidate: soaring ceilings, perfect proportions, materials that had survived millennia without degradation. It whispered to visitors, "We are eternal. You are temporary." Esther refused to be intimidated. She paused before a garden alcove where bioluminescent plants cast a soft glow. Inside, the Novali ambassador Veshna waited, his skin patterns shifting nervously through blues and purples. "Dr. Okonkwo." He greeted her, his translator converting the liquid syllables of his native language. "You walk a dangerous path." "All meaningful paths are dangerous," she replied, settling beside him. "Your speech in the assembly was courageous." Veshna's skin flickered with modest yellows, the first Novali to publicly oppose an Eldarin declaration in 800 years. "My family may suffer for it. Yet you spoke anyway. You're humans. You don't understand what you've started," Veshna said, his patterns intensifying. "The consortium seems monolithic, but beneath the surface, many species have long questioned the leadership of the elder races. Your defiance has given voice to those doubts." Esther nodded, gazing at the ancient garden. "The Eldarin believe their power comes from technological superiority. They're wrong. True power comes from connection, building bridges rather than walls." She reached into her diplomatic pouch and removed a small object wrapped in cloth. Unwrapped, it revealed itself as a crystalline sculpture showing intertwined forms, human and Novali. "This was created by the human child and the elderly Krell I presented at the assembly," she explained. "They worked together during the recess. Neither understood the other's language, yet they created this." Veshna's skin pulsed with wonder as he examined the sculpture. "The Eldarin would say this is impossible. Different species cannot truly collaborate without centuries of guided integration." "The Eldarin have never understood the power of necessity," Esther said. "When survival depends on cooperation, beings find ways to connect." From the shadows beyond the garden, other representatives emerged. A young Achira, whose crystalline form hadn't yet hardened into dogmatic patterns, a representative of the plant-like Futurans, whose species have been relegated to agricultural support roles. They gathered around the sculpture, touching it with appendages both familiar and alien. "Tomorrow, we present our alternative charter," Esther said quietly. "Not a hierarchical consortium, but a cooperative of equals. The elder races will resist." Veshna's patterns shifted to determined amber. "Let them. For too long, we accepted their assertion that only they could lead. Your humans have shown us another way." As the impromptu gathering dispersed, Esther remained a moment longer, her gaze drawn upward to the distant ceiling where consortium history was recorded in meticulous detail. "There's always space for new chapters," she whispered to herself, tapping her cane against the floor 3 times, the signal to her hidden recording devices that the meeting had concluded successfully. Bakken Rivera's prosthetic left arm whirred softly as he made final adjustments to the sonic resonance array. The mining facility on Ceres had become his primary testing ground, far enough from consortium monitoring stations to work without constant interference. "Ready for another test run?" asked Mira, his Novali assistant. Her skin patterns glowed with anticipation, shifting between excited amber and nervous green. "Almost," Droken replied, tightening a final connection. "The frequency modulation is tricky, too high, and the molecular bonds shatter completely, too low and nothing happens." His invention worked by finding the precise resonant frequency of valuable elements within asteroid material, causing them to vibrate at a molecular level and separate from surrounding minerals. The consortium's extraction methods brute forced the process, requiring enormous energy and leaving most resources unrecovered. "The Eldarin inspectors arrive in 3 days," Mira reminded him, her patterns briefly flashing anxiety purple. "If they discover what we're doing, then we better make sure this works before they get here." Gokun smiled, initiating the startup sequence. The array hummed to life, sending invisible waves through the captured asteroid fragment in the testing chamber. For several seconds, nothing visible happened. Then, brilliantly colored patterns began to emerge within the rock. Gold, platinum, iridium, rare earth elements, each resonating at a different frequency and glowing with distinctive colors. It's working. Mira's skin rippled with joy patterns so bright they illuminated the dim testing chamber. The extracted materials began collecting in separate containers, achieving in minutes what would take consortium refineries weeks. Wakun checked the efficiency readings and laughed aloud. 92% extraction. We've beaten our previous record. Through the observation window, they could see the first full-scale implementation of the technology on a mining field. Hundreds of asteroids pulsed with rainbow hues as valuable materials separated themselves from ordinary rock. The sight was so spectacular that mining crews had taken to calling it the Aurora Harvest. Wakun sent the signal to begin broadcasting the results throughout the resource cooperative network. Within minutes, mining operations run by humans, Novali, and other allied species across 3 star systems began implementing the new settings. On his primary display, market projections scrolled in real time. The consortium's monopoly on 15 critical elements would collapse within a month. Their economic control, maintained for thousands of years, was evaporating before their eyes. "They'll try to stop us," Mira said, her patterns showing both excitement and concern. Wakun nodded, the servos in his prosthetic arm adjusting smoothly as he brought up the contingency protocols. "That's why we've built redundancy into everything. For every operation they shut down, 3 more will activate." He gazed out at the glowing asteroid field, feeling the sense of quiet satisfaction. The consortium had always assumed power came from controlling access to resources. Humans had learned differently during Earth's scarcity crisis. True power came from innovation that created abundance where there had been lack. "The universe isn't defined by limits," he told Mira as they watched the beautiful harvest of light, "only by our imagination in overcoming them." Admiral Wei Zhang moved silently through the crystalline corridors of the stellar archives, his footsteps making no sound on the diamond-hard floors. Behind him, his granddaughter Mai traced the ancient symbols etched into the walls with her fingers, her eyes wide with wonder and calculation. "The encryption patterns are fractal," she whispered. "Each level contains the key to the next, but also depends on all previous levels." Brilliant and beautiful. The archives rose around them like a frozen waterfall of knowledge, data crystals glowing with the accumulated wisdom of 1,000 civilizations. Some sections pulsed with bright light, knowledge deemed appropriate for sharing. Others remained dim, their contents restricted to only the Akira themselves. "How much farther to the central chamber?" Zhang asked, his breath fogging in the unnaturally cold air. Mai consulted her modified scanner. 2 more junctions. Security density increases exponentially from here. They had infiltrated the archives by posing as maintenance crew for the environmental systems. The Achira's crystalline bodies required specific atmospheric conditions the humans could tolerate only briefly without protection. The disguise had gotten them past the outer defenses, but would not hold much longer. At the next junction, they encountered their first significant obstacle, a phalanx of junior archivists, their translucent bodies reflecting prismatic light patterns as they communicated with each other. "Stay behind me," Zhang whispered, adjusting his thermal cape to match the ambient temperature signatures. Before he could devise a distraction, his granddaughter stepped forward and began tracing specific patterns on the nearest wall panel. The symbols she touched illuminated in sequence, forming a complex geometric proof. The archivists paused, their internal light patterns shifting to what Zhang recognized as surprised interest. They gathered around me as she continued solving the mathematical theorem inscribed on the wall, one that, according to their intelligence, had remained unsolved for centuries. While the archivists were distracted by this unexpected display of understanding from a supposedly inferior species, Zhang slipped past them toward the central chamber where the master control crystals were housed. He reached the massive doorway just as alarms began pulsing through the structure. His access codes, obtained at great cost from a disillusioned Achira scientist, worked on the first attempt and the sealed portal slid open with a soft crystalline chime. Inside, the knowledge of galaxies hung suspended in a matrix of light and crystal. And waiting at its center stood the High Archon, its ancient body containing the compressed wisdom of 1,000 ancestors. "I have been expecting you, human." The High Archon's voice resonated directly in Zhang's mind. "You seek that which is not yours to possess." Zhang stood his ground, meeting the gaze of the being whose species had hoarded knowledge since before humans had discovered fire. "Knowledge belongs to no one," he replied, activating the transmission device hidden within his uniform. "And to everyone." The High Archon's crystalline features shifted in what might have been a smile. "Let us discuss the nature of wisdom, then, before you attempt what cannot be undone." Ambassador Elena Torres stood at the edge of the observation deck, watching the procession of ships arriving for the inaugural assembly. 20 years had passed since that first tense meeting with the Eldarin, yet she still wore her trademark red commander's jacket, now somewhat faded, with mission patches from a dozen critical moments in humanity's journey among the stars. Below her, in Unity Station's Grand Promenade, representatives from 32 species mingled freely. Children from worlds light years apart played together in the zero-gravity park, their laughter transcending the language barriers that once seemed insurmountable. "Quite a view, isn't it?" came a familiar voice. Torres turned to find the Eldarin delegate approaching, his skin displaying colors she had never seen in their first encounters, warm oranges and gentle golds that indicated comfort and openness. "I never imagined I'd live to see this day," she admitted. "Nor I," the Eldarin replied. "My ancestors would consider this chaos." He gestured to the promenade, where species evolved under different suns shared ideas without hierarchy or restriction. Torres smiled. "And what do you consider it?" "Harmony," he said simply, though not the kind we once sought to impose. They stood in companionable silence, watching a group of scientists, Human, Novali, and Achira, demonstrating a new medical technology that combined approaches from all three civilizations. Nearby, a formerly warlike Krell instructed young diplomats in the art of conflict resolution, its exoskeleton bearing the marks of battles fought and wisdom gained. "We had it backward all along," the Eldarin continued. "The consortium believed perfect order required perfect control. We feared chaos as entropy, the death of civilization. Yet here we are," Torres said, "finding order within chaos rather than imposing order upon it." A notification chimed softly, alerting them that the ceremony was about to begin. At the center of the station, the great chamber awaited, its architecture incorporating elements from all member species, a physical manifestation of their new philosophy. "Shall we?" Torres asked, offering her arm in the formal Eldarin gesture of equal respect. The alien diplomat returned the gesture, his skin patterns shifting to match the red of her jacket, a subtle acknowledgement that would have been unthinkable 2 decades earlier. As they walked together toward the chamber, Torres spotted Dr. Patel's daughter Maya, now a renowned scientist, deep in conversation with a young Akshura researcher. Captain Fatima Al-Zarani stood nearby with a Krell communications specialist, likely discussing new security protocols. Marcus Chen and his daughter Lily, heroes of Proxima Centauri, greeted delegates from worlds that once threatened their destruction. "The future will be complex," the Eldarin observed. "It always was," Torres replied. "We just stopped pretending otherwise." The great doors to the assembly chamber opened, revealing the gathered delegates rising to welcome them. Above the assembly, a simple phrase had been inscribed in the languages of all member species: "Unity in diversity, strength in adaptation, peace in understanding."